Well, hi everybody. I'm going to ramble a little bit about my home network, maybe give you some ideas of how you can run your home network in a more streamlined and efficient way. We're going to go through all the hardware that I use. I'm going to show you the NAS that I have, the couple of different NAS units that I have. I'm going to talk about the software that I'm using to sling media all over my location and even into remote locations and right into these eyeballs and into these earballs. And I do got some splaining to do. So stay tuned for all that, but first let's activate your copy of Windows, get that up and running, and then we'll get down and dirty on the floor with all of my Ethernet cables. Let's head over to Hookeys and unlock our copy of Windows. By using coupon code TS25, you can get 25% off these prices here. I use Windows 10 Pro. You can also get Windows 10 Home, and both of these will upgrade to Windows 11. You can get that whenever you're purchasing your key. Also, I want to note that if you get Windows 10 Home and you upgrade it to Windows 11, they will force you to use an online account. With Windows 11 Pro, however, you can use a local account, just so you know. You can also get Office 2019 with that same discount. So go ahead and put TS25 in here as your coupon code, hit apply, and then you can see we can get Windows 10 Pro for $14.85. Once you're finished, if you want to access your key, you click on your name on the top right, click on User Center, and you'll see My Purchase Orders. Right here, you'll be able to view the keys that you've purchased just by clicking on View Keys and Codes. Then you will see your code right here. Just go ahead and copy this code, press Start, type Activate, and you'll see activation settings come up. Click on that. Then click Change Product Key. Right there, you can paste in your code and hit Next, and then you will be activated. It's very simple. So don't pay those retail prices for your copy of Windows or Office. Head over to Hookeys.com and use coupon code TS25. You know, moving has actually been a very good thing for me, even though it's been very stressful. It's been a very difficult move, but it's allowed me to sort of prioritize certain things and remove certain bits of nonsense from my life. And I want to preface everything that I'm saying by letting you know that the different tech people that you see on the internet, the different YouTubers and stuff, they're all on a false upgrade cycle. They're always adding new things. They're always doing new things. And this is not indicative of real life. Most of that stuff was acquired for free. Most of the time when they're doing some crazy new upgrade, it's way above and beyond what they personally need. But they're just getting all this stuff from these companies. And so therefore, they make crazy sensationalized videos about my 1 billion terabyte NAS that I'm using at home. Then you start to desire this ridiculous setup that you don't need. Since I moved, I was like, do I really need all of this stuff? I think I can cut down on a few different things. So in my last place, I had a 42U rack. Sold it. Got rid of it. Everything is on a simple shelf now. I had a Dell PowerEdge server, dual Xeon 128. Sold it. Got rid of it. So I'm going to show you how I've narrowed everything down. And I want to first preface this by saying I am no longer building my own NAS units. I was given a NAS years and years ago by Synology, and it completely converted me. Because I found with, I was using FreeNAS before that, which required an enormous amount of RAM and all that sort of stuff. I found with that one, I tended to tinker with it probably more than I should, and I would mess around with it. I could be like, oh, look at all this stuff I can do with it. And since it was very DIY, I ended up doing it myself a lot more than I probably should have. If you're someone who wants to make tinkering your hobby and you want to make understanding the inner workings of Linux and FreeBSD your hobby, then that's an amazing way to go. But for me, I am more interested in creativity. I am more interested in working on projects, working on games and music, and also just, playing games. So I want something that works, that requires minimal fuss and headache. And that's why I switched over to Synology. And once I got there, the thing that really kept me there was the BTRFS file system. I really like their amazing RAID technology. So I'm on Synology now, but I also have an Asus Tor because I wanted to try the two different brands out. I've also tried Drobo. Drobo was great. Didn't have quite the app ecosystem of the other two, but it was really powerful and great too. So that's what I have. Now let's go on a tour and I'll show you all of my server gear. This is what they gave me when I first got here. I had one port on the wall, and there was a piece of paper that was taped to the wall above it that said all you have to do to get on the internet is plug your Wi-Fi device in here. And whenever I talked about the other Ethernet jacks in the building, the dude was like, no, you just plug it into the one and then you get your Wi-Fi going. And I realized, oh no, I'm in a building full of people who don't know about Ethernet. Every time I talk to anyone in the building about internet, they don't call it internet, they call it Wi-Fi. But I don't care about Wi-Fi, I want Ethernet. Now this is Cat 5e. So I was like, I wonder how they have this set up. So down here, this is the closet. There's like a little networking area, and this building has several different options because that's one of the benefits of one of the benefits of living in a city is you have different options. There's my Comcast garbage that's unplugged. There's a CenturyLink thing in here that I've unplugged. And then there's a bunch of wires just coming through right here, a bunch of Ethernet cables and wires and stuff. And when I first got here, all of these were tied up and they were plugged up to nothing. So I was like, I wonder how this works. And then I realized that one of these blue cables was plugged in to something. So before we had this, it was just going into one of those blue plugs there, and all the rest of them were just tied down. So what I did was I took this and plugged this into my router, and then plugged my router into a switch, and all those blue cables got plugged into the switch, and suddenly I have Ethernet all over the house and internet all over the house. So this was all just tied up. They didn't tell me anything about it, and I was like, whatever. You see all this? This is behind everything. How I keep it. Now, I used to have a 42U rack, but it's like I don't need that anymore. This is really all I need. It's ugly, but I wanted to show you the back of it first, and I don't care if it's ugly because it's never going to move. It's just going to be like this. So I've unhooked many things in here. I unhooked all these different things up here. I used to have this going, my 24 port gig switch. I used to have that going. I used to have all these other switches going. I don't need them anymore. You know, before I was actually using a beefier router. I wasn't using this Linksys, even though this is really beefy. I had a full-on PF Sense box going, but the fan died in that. And since I'm not always in here listening, I didn't know that the fan died, and I didn't get any notifications, and then this machine burned out. So I ended up just throwing that one in the trash, plugged this in, and as far as the speed goes, they're identical. Completely identical with the speed. The PF Sense box had maybe a few more security features that I maybe need or want. So anyway, the internet comes into here, and then I just have a couple plugs in the back, one going to my switch, and then one going here. This is a Raspberry Pi, and that is running one instance of Pi-hole. So I'm doing it that way now instead of running two on the same virtual machine box. So that's what's going on there. Now, speaking of virtual machines, let's just come right up here. We have the Wi-Fi. I didn't get anything too huge and fancy. This will do 500 megabits a second, pretty much halfway around the house. It's 200 or 300 in the farthest reaches of this area. And then I've got this. Now, a few videos ago, I showed you my Proxmox server. Well, I've moved all that over to here because I decided I only need one Ethernet jack in the back, and this Udo Bolt is an awesome AMD based system that's way faster, and it has 32 gigabytes of RAM, and it's just super fast for Proxmox. So I'm running virtual machines right here. Got a copy of Windows on there, got a Linux machine on there, and I also have another instance of Pi-hole on here. So one instance of Pi-hole here, and then one instance of Pi-hole here for redundancy, just so we can have them both going at the same time. And also with everything that I'm doing here, sometimes it saturates the DNS because it only allows so many, I guess, so many things per second. So you can change those options, but it's good to have just, you know, backup and redundancies. This, I keep this sideways so you can see what's plugged in, but this is my big Apc Battery Backup. Very important to have a battery backup. All the important stuff's plugged in over here for the battery backup so that if I lose power, I can log in and shut things down gracefully. Now let's move on down and take a look at my NAS units. I have two. I do not need two, or I wouldn't need two if I wasn't working on different game projects and stuff. It's probably a little dark, but I have two different ones. This is the DS918 Plus, and this is from Synology. And if I only had one, it would probably be this one. So I've got beautiful Synology RAID on here. It's been so easy to swap out drives and use drives that are different sizes and stuff. Right now I've got 12, 12, 12, and 10. Now I'm gonna replace this 10 very soon, but it's been like 5 or 6 years, and this one's got like a few bad sectors finally. But these all had bad sectors, so I swapped them out for 12 and it just worked. I like things that just work. And then down here on the bottom, this is my Asus Tor NAS. And this one might be a little bit more powerful. It's super fast, but I use this for all my media and fun stuff like Jellyfin and all that. I don't need, like I said, I don't need two NASs. I got this one for free. Thank you very much, Synology, for sending it over for videos and reviews. And then I bought this one myself, just so I could, like, you know, take a look and see which one I like better. This one, is easier to use when it comes to mapping remote drives on machines that are outside of your house, and it has a great app ecosystem. The only reason I don't like it better is because it does standard RAID, whereas I really like using BTRFS with Synology's RAID on the Synology right here. Over here on the side here, that is just a 14 terabyte hard drive. It's probably really dark over there, hard to see. But I've got that 14 terabyte hard drive plugged directly into the Asus Tor to back up my media, my anime collection, and all that kind of stuff. So that just runs a backup. It does like a complete backup once a month, but incremental backups all the time. And then we have a 24 port gig switch right there, just plugged in and all the wires going out the back. But I also do 2.5. That's another thing I like about this Asus Tor right here. It has native 2.5 gigabit Ethernet support. Not 10 gig, but that's fine. I've got Cat 5e, so, and all my motherboards happen to have 2.5 gigabit at the moment. The Synology does not have the 2.5 gigabit. You've got options for upgrading and stuff like that, but what I actually did was grabbed a Realtek USB NIC, and I plugged it into the back and manually loaded up the drivers. It was a really easy package that I grabbed on GitHub, and I'll put those links in the description. But you want to make sure you grab the correct Realtek device so that it doesn't overheat. So I have that hooked up, and then right over here, that is an Asus Tor Realtek based 2.5 gigabit switch. And all the important stuff, like I've got, you know, my Synology and this are all plugged in to the 2.5 gig NIC. And then I have that wired into all of the ports around the house. So all my ports around the house are going to have the 2.5 gigabit connectivity. This is the Asus Tor Switch and Store. God, that name. But yeah, it's a 5-port 2.5 gigabit NIC, and it's unmanaged. It just works, and it doesn't get as hot as some of the other units out there in the market. I want to talk for just a minute about these switches, because these TP-Link switches have really been great for me. This is an 8-port. This is the TLSG108E, and I've got 5-port and 8-port switches in various different shapes and sizes, but I like the TP-Link ones, especially these metal ones. They just work, they don't really overheat, and they do a great job. So what I've been doing to expand my network is if I want to keep the 2.5 gigabit, then I'll just run one of these. And then if I need more ports than those 5, or if I have some devices that are just gigabit, I can use one of these inexpensive ones to expand off of that, and I've got switches coming from switches. But that's it, and that is my entire network. I guess we could call this a shelf, not a rack, it's just a shelf. But I don't need anything else, and I've eliminated so many things. The only things that I want to add to this really are just maybe one more USB drive for external backup on my Synology, but right now this Synology down here, we've got people working on stuff and they all have backup copies of it on their computer, so I'm not as worried as I am about my media collections. So I'd like to add maybe a few more VMs right here, some stuff that's going to take me a little bit longer, like a reverse proxy and all that kind of stuff. Stuff that's not incredibly important at the moment, but it would be nice to add in the future. So that's the network here. All right, so now I'll show you how I use my network. This is my Synology NAS, and from here I can access all my files and stuff like that. We run some virtual machines, and this is just for people who are working on different projects, creative projects and stuff like that. But I really like the fact that we can use the virtual machine manager to handle that. Now that goes beyond home network. This is more business stuff, so I'm going to skip past this part because most people will not need to do stuff like this. And then I'll show you what I have over here. This is my Asus Tor. Let me just log in. There we go. And with Asus Tor, there's a few different things that I use. I've got Plex, but I'm going to turn that off. I don't even use this anymore since I've started using Jellyfin. Now with Jellyfin, you literally just fill up all your folders with movies and stuff like that. And as long as you title everything correctly, everything will show up correctly in your database. And if not, you can come in and mess with it a little bit. Yeah, I've got everything in here. It works great, for whenever I'm watching and streaming things. So yeah, Jellyfin is the best. And I run this on my TV. I run this over there on where I'm working out, but I just basically keep this everywhere. But I run that straight from my Asus Tor. And if I'm just chilling in this room, I also have a copy of foobar on here that pulls from the network where all my media is stored. And then I can just go ahead and listen to stuff. So that when I'm working over here and stuff like this, I've got the music going in the background. It's pretty cool, because these happen to be my best sounding speakers in here. Otherwise, just got some external devices that I back up everything to. Right there it is. And this just does the incremental backups so that everything is safe and secure. So there are my two NASs. Got my cool background here from Oblivion with my mods. It's beautiful. And then this one, that's Shodan, of course. Now over here, this is my Proxmox. And if you haven't seen my Proxmox video, you should go take a look at that, but know that I'm doing a few things differently now. And one of the things is I'm running most things with a Windows 10 VM as opposed to running the Linux VMs before. And there's one reason for that. But I'll go ahead and walk you through the other things here. I've got a bunch of VMs on here. If I want to, test something on Windows 11, I can spin this up and then go over here to my shell and test it out. I've got an Ubuntu server that I used to use, but I've been turning it off lately. And I'll show you why I'm using a Windows 10 VM. This thing right here, yep, this is my other computer that's in the other room. Let me go ahead and maximize this. I run it in a 1080p window, just for, I don't know why, just for grins. Now the reason I use that is because I want foobar. And foobar does not work very well on Linux. It does, but not with all the options I want. The reason I want foobar is because with foobar you can run a UPnP server, and we have our server settings here. So I can set this up with a port and internet access. I've got it configured to work with my DDNS server, but if you have an IP address or whatever, so you can set this up for external access. So you can use the foobar app on your phone to play back all your music. Now there's plenty of apps that are better than the foobar app, but there's one reason that I use this app, and that is because I have a lot of video game music, a lot of VGZ files and stuff like this. These are MP3s, but let's say I want to go and check out maybe Elisa Dragoon, the best soundtrack on the Sega Genesis or the Mega Drive. That's a VGM file. VGM files do not just play back on anything. You need to go to your preferences and download and install components, like this VGM Stream plugin. You have to have these installed so that you can play back these VGM files. See, now I'm playing that back. But without that, you can't play these. Now, since it's all going to be streaming from this device and not from my app or whatever, it can take advantage of all of those file extensions, and I'll be able to play back VGM files. I'll be able to play back, like the Super Nintendo, the SPC files. Those will all play back just fine on my app because it's playing through this machine. So I had to set this to start with the computer. So every time my computer starts, this program comes up, as well as a few other programs down here in the corner. I'll show you the stuff that comes up. I've got another instance of Jellyfin that I'm playing with on this device. And then, of course, I've got one of these. This is the VPN that I recommend. And there's a really good reason that I recommend it. For number one, it's not been compromised. No one's IP address has ever leaked or anything like that, which I like. There's a good track record. But I'm going to go ahead and close out this VM and show you why I run this. And I think this VPN is plenty fast. So this is the speed I get with the VPN turned on. It says Cogent, even though that's not what I'm using because it's running through Seattle. Normally this is a couple hundred megabits per second faster. I've seen it as high as 800, but right now it's 7:28 p.m. in the afternoon, so more people are using it. But these speeds are ridiculous. That's why I use this VPN, because the price is low enough, and it's in one of the Five Eyes countries, as people say. But I find that no country is really outside of the jurisdiction of one of the Five Eyes countries if we start looking at how all these countries work together. So I don't worry about that as much. I just worry about the track record of them never having leaked any user data, and they have never had any breaches, and they also have never, ever turned over anyone's IP address or anything like that. They don't have any logs, so that's why I use them, plus the price, plus the speed. Not an advertisement, but I'll put a link to them down in the description. Private internet access is what I use on all my machines. Above and beyond that, we do have a GitLab server up and running for the Zweihander game project we were working on, even though it's not called Zweihander or anything like that. It's a learning project. We haven't been working on that much as of late, but might get back to that soon now that stress levels are a little bit lower and I have some time to do that. Maybe I'll talk to Christian, Daniel, Mike, and everybody and say what's up. Maybe get back into doing a little bit of that game development. But also I'm going to be working on some music projects. But all that is on the NAS as well, and it's on a separate Ubuntu VM. So yeah, we've still got Ubuntu going with some nerdy stuff, but that's for a very specific project, and I wouldn't recommend doing that just for a standard home internet application. If you have any suggestions on ways that I can improve this or simplify it even further, I know getting rid of one of the NAS units is a thing that I might do in the future and just put everything on one. But right now I don't want to bog down one or the other because one of them's for business and the other one's for pleasure. Anyway, that's what it is. I hope you had some fun. I hope you maybe got some ideas. And if you're someone who is way over the top and it's constantly frustrating you, realize you may have too much gear. You may be doing more than you need to do. Simplify that down to its bare minimum and play some games. That would be my recommendation. So anyway, I'll see you all in the comments. Thanks for hanging out for a bit.